Hi, my name's Fred Zelt, and this is a talk I gave to the Montour Trail Council at their annual dinner in Pittsburgh on November 7th, 2021. Let me just set up the slides here, share the screen, and get the slide going. Then we'll get started. Okay, 5 million pedal rotations. That's a lot in 5 years or so, but they add up when you pedal 200 miles one day in South Park or 4,295 miles from Maine to Seattle as a fundraisers for multiple sclerosis. The Montour Trail Council makes it possible for people to gain the benefits of many more than 5 million pedal pushes outdoors, mostly away from cars, and every year on the Montour Trail. And what are the benefits of this? Connection, service as part of a network, and a path to well-being. My path to being here started with growing up in Bethel Park, marrying a girl from my high school class when we were 22, going away for 37 years, then returning to Pittsburgh in 2015. Through what must have been some sort of data entry error, I somehow got into MIT for college. I tried to make the best of it by graduating in 3 years, getting a PhD in geology at Princeton, and working as a geologist and manager with Exxon and ExxonMobil for 30 years. But there was always a connection here. Our parents stayed in Bethel and they all walked on the Montour Trail. I'm eternally grateful that my father was able to walk the trail with his buddies routinely for many, many years. And through the years, I've walked or cycled on the trail, including in Tour de Montour events. Thank you, Montour Trail Council, for making this possible. As an adult, I started cycling when I was 53, and I've done several journeys 2 days or longer since then. While living in Houston, I wanted to experience the largest of the more than 80 bike MS rides in the country. The bike MS ride from Houston to Austin was like a carnival on wheels with 13,000 cyclists pedaling for 2 days. I did my first century, 100 miles on the first day. Since then, I've done the 3 bike MS rides in Western Pennsylvania, including the 2-day escape to the lake ride from Lake Arthur to Conneaut, Ohio. In 2017, I cycled the 4,295 miles in 69 days from Maine to Seattle with a Bike to US RMS group. Cycling with a group who become like family, getting several hours of outdoor exercise every day, and seeing the country at the pace of a bicycle is an amazing and addictive experience. I helped lead a Bike to US RMS group from Virginia to San Francisco in 2018, pedaled segments with their Atlantic Coast and Northern Tier groups in 2019. I cycled the Gap in C&O in 2017, shown in black on the map. I also cycled 500 miles solo self-supported from Pittsburgh to Blacksburg in Western Virginia on the Gap, part of the C&O, and then down the beautiful Shenandoah Valley in springtime. Last summer, I pedaled across Iowa for 6 days together with 15,000 people in the moving festival of cycling that is RAGBRAI. I wanted to share with you a few photos from some of these trips. Here's a typical view on the Northern Tier route in the White Mountains of New Hampshire. And this is a mountain pass in the White Mountains, Kankamagus Pass. I also wanted to show a slide from the Appalachians. These cyclists are dreading climbing an Appalachian ridge on an old 2-lane road with no shoulder at Hayter's Gap in Western Virginia. The ridge is in the background. There were several barriers like this on the Trans Am route. You might wonder, of all of this, what were my very favorite experiences? A real scenic highlight was cycling going to the Sun Road in Glacier National Park on a beautiful, clear summer day. On a bike, you can easily stop and park anywhere to go visit a waterfall, the shoreline of a calm lake, or a mountain overlook. It's like picking ripe fruit off a tree, collecting experiences one by one. Also on the Northern Tier, there were 5 places I saw both sunset and sunrise over a lake, from the shore of Lake Ontario to Osakis, Minnesota, at the end of the Lake Wobegon Trail. One of these places was in Huron, Ohio, near the southernmost point in Lake Erie. I only saw this because of traveling at the speed of a bike. Cycling on a small road along the Erie Lakeshore west of Cleveland, I stopped to watch a grandfather on a riding mower with a grandson on his lap. He motored over to me and we talked a bit. When he learned I would be staying with the group in a church in Huron that night, he told me to be sure to go out on a jetty to a lighthouse for the sunset. In Huron, I wasn't able to convince anyone else to go out with me, but I went. And the sunset was the most amazing of many, many sunsets I've seen. Sun rays reflected in calm water behind the jetty. Then, when the sun went down, the sky turned ruby red. And I only saw this because on a bike, it's easy to stop, talk, and engage with people. Traveling across the country, I met some great people. I came to realize that the super nice, respectful, and courteous way people in the rural upper Midwest treat others is truly a national treasure. This makes a big difference when you're a stranger wherever you go. More than once, people stopped their work trucks on 100-degree days to give us cold water, and there were many other kindnesses shown to us too. When people found out we were riding for MS, some handed us cash. How often in real life do people you don't know spontaneously hand you a donation of $5, $10, $20, or $100 to help other people? There were so many kind people. My very favorite surprise encounter wasn't in the upper Midwest. It was with John and Haley in Shelby, Montana. A slow-moving train had blocked the road into town, so my riding partner and I struck up a conversation with John and Haley. John had been riding the rails for 5 years, and Haley had been traveling for 3. They had phones, and they worked their way around the country, including some time in Pittsburgh. They understood how special and ephemeral their vagabond lives were. They'd read Jack Kerouac, and they really had their gear down. I felt like an amateur even after having traveled for more than a month across the country from Maine. And yes, that's me on the left. I grew a beard while our soldier son was in Afghanistan that year. When I remarked to Haley about patches on her skirt, she got a big smile, set her pack down, and pulled out a pair of pants with a zillion patches. She showed us that each patch covered an actual hole. They weren't applique, and she had spent many hours sewing the patches on with dental floss. Those pants chronicled Haley's journey with patches, and they were her most prized possession. Each patch a memory. And safe outdoor spaces like the Montour Trail make these sorts of memories possible for many people. I think many of you on the Montour Trail Council know a secret to happiness. In your work on the Montour Trail, you've found a way to do useful work that serves others and to be around other good service-oriented people. On the cross-country trips, I had a lot of time to think and learn some things about happiness. All of our overnight stuff fit in a cubby that was about this big in a trailer. That's what we had for 2 months. But we were very happy. Clearly, stuff was not the key to happiness. I realized then that the key ingredients were to be doing something useful that helps people and to be around good people you like. I also wanted to talk about the Montour Trail as a connection. This map shows elevation in the eastern US. You can see that the Appalachians, the root of an ancient mountain belt that was once as high as the Andes, block the eastern US. The grain of ridges and valleys forms a natural barrier. The Adventure Cycling Association's southern tier route avoids the Appalachians completely, hugging the Gulf Coast in Mississippi, Alabama, and the Florida Panhandle. But the southern tier, in my opinion, isn't really the quintessential American journey. The popular Trans Am route does cross the middle of America. It goes right through the Appalachians in Western Virginia. I've seen this route, and that segment is a barrier for people. I know a fellow who blew out his knee climbing an Appalachian ridge there at the place I mentioned, Hayter's Gap. Even people well into cross-country rides walk their bikes up steep, narrow, winding back roads that have no shoulders. Not great for everyone. The northern tier crosses the White Mountains in New Hampshire, the Green Mountains in Vermont, on well-engineered roads without super steep grades, if you think 16% is not super steep. Then after the rugged Adirondacks, the route hugs relatively flat terrain along the Great Lakes. Right now, the best route across the middle of the country to get the quintessential American experience is to use the Great Allegheny Passage and C&O Canal. It's the Great American Rail Trail. The Gap Trail is key to crossing the Appalachians on a relatively flat path with the added safety bonus of being a car-free route. And the Montour Trail is an important part of this connection, giving cyclists a scenic, safe way to cycle across the country. The Montour Trail is also important as part of a network. To make car-free travel really useful to people, there has to be a network of safe routes, not just a single linear recreational trail in isolation. The Montour Trail connects with each of the communities it passes through. It connects with the Panhandle Trail. I've used the T in library to connect downtown with the Montour. And the connection between the end of the trail in Coriopolis and the end of the Gap downtown will be super important. It's really important to have a safe, flat connection there. And I know you on the Montour Trail Council are always planning and working to achieve more and more network connections. The trail is also a path to wellness. Like my dad and his walking buddies, the trail provides the opportunity for physical exercise and the good health that comes from that, plus the camaraderie and mental well-being that come from being part of a group larger than yourself. You see this almost every day on the trail as friends walk and talk together, or walk their dogs, or cats, or cycle or run as part of a group. This is so important. And so is the safety. Last summer, for the first time, I was able to visit the Netherlands and cycle there. Bike paths are everywhere separate from the roadways used by cars, and cycling is much, much safer and more common than here in the US. Being part of a network of bike paths separated from cars saves lives. What could be more important than that? And the improved safety gets people outdoors for the exercise and well-being benefits. After cycling the Northern Tier in 2017, where I thought about the key ingredients of happiness, I decided to volunteer to help the good people in the National MS Society who raise funds to help people by running charity bike rides. Being an MIT-trained scientist, my way of helping started with collecting data from all 81 Bike MS rides in 2017, making a spreadsheet and charts, and finding commonalities, success factors, and opportunities for increased fundraising. I wish I could say the opportunities led to growth in fundraising to help people who have MS, but so far, senior MS brass have focused more on cost cutting than growth at the national level. But this analytical approach led me to look at the 31 charity bike rides in Western Pennsylvania, which I estimated to have raised more than $2.4 million in 2019. And that's the subject of this chart. I hosted a Pittsburgh area charity bike ride leadership summit back in pre-pandemic times. 30 of the ride leaders participated, including representatives of the Montour Trail. There was networking and sharing of learnings, including around ride safety, volunteer appreciation, and more. One recommendation I had, which is well supported by the Western Pennsylvania charity ride data, was to supplement fee-based donation models by giving cyclists the opportunity to do fundraising as part of the event, and to publicly recognize and show appreciation for top fundraisers. I know at least one Western Pennsylvania charity ride took this recommendation on board, adding fundraising to their fee-only ride, and greatly increased their fundraising even with the pandemic last year. I think this could work well for the Tour de Montour too. A second observation potentially relevant to the MTC fundraising efforts is that the Walk MS event in Pittsburgh in normal years raises almost as much as the largest Bike MS event in Western Pennsylvania, with a much lower cost of running the event. The Walk MS event is held on a weekend morning in a very central location, in their case, centered in Point State Park. I'd also like to point out that the Montour Trail is a good, safe venue for other charities to host fundraisers. There's been a cancer charity ride on the Panhandle for a few years now, but I'm not aware of a similar local charity ride on the Montour. It's just another potential way for the trail to serve the community. The examples I know are long distance charity rides that have used the Montour. Here's a photo of a group of veterans on the Panhandle heading to the Montour in Pittsburgh in 2019. They were cycling from San Diego and arrived in DC on the 4th of July, and the Montour was a key part of their route. The Fuller Center is named after the founder of Habitat for Humanity. Fuller cyclists on long distance rides do service projects along the way, like building a wheelchair ramp or doing repairs for homeowners in need. Here's a group of Fuller cyclists who pedaled the Montour from McDonald toward Pittsburgh on their way across the country. I had a chance to guide some of them around Pittsburgh on a day off and then cycle with them the next day from Pittsburgh to Connellsville, including at the point here where we took this picture. Great group. And they cycled the Montour. In 2020, I'd planned to cycle for 6 months in a big loop around the perimeter of the US with 4 Bike the US for MS groups. As a charity fundraiser, Airtech Designs and I plan to host a Pittsburgh Bike Film Festival. Service with good people. When all of that went away one day in March of 2020, in frustration, I created a Social Distance Cycling Club Facebook group to commiserate with other homebound cyclists for what I thought would be a few weeks. 18 months and more than 80,000 shared cycling photos later, the 7,600 member group has become an online community. After a few weeks of looking at my photo of springtime on the Gap as the group cover, that's the cover in the upper left, I started using member photos as covers, changing them about once a week. The next one was that great photo of Dante's view of Death Valley National Park, taken in the first month of the pandemic and really appropriate for the times of social distancing, I think. So I'm going to go through and show you all of the covers to date in chronological order as I talk through some points. What have I learned from watching over this group? First, now that I have so many online cyclist friends, about every week I see a cycling injury. So I've become more paranoid and safety conscious than ever. Second, we've all seen so many great places to cycle, and our lists of places to go have ballooned. In the past year, I've cycled lots of bike paths in Western Pennsylvania that I didn't really know about before the pandemic. And several of them I saw in this global group. I saw posts about these in this global group here in Western Pennsylvania. Now I've cycled almost all of the 20 or so bike paths longer than 10 miles in Western Pennsylvania. The third thing is how wonderful it is to actually meet and cycle with new online friends. I've been able to do this both by traveling to cycling events and here in Pittsburgh by guiding visiting cyclists on the Gap between Pittsburgh and McKeesport. And the most recent picture in the lower right corner, that's of a group I guided on the Gap, and you'll see them again at the top of the next slide. It was a really fun group. They're a group of 22 cyclists I led at the start of their Gap and C&O trip in September. These cyclists are mainly from the Midwest, and I could see that they brought the positive RAGBRAI spirit with them to the Gap. It was so fun to turn around and see a line of 22 cyclists, most with bright red plaid shirts heading along the trail. I laughed every time I turned around and saw a line of these shirts. And this interaction only happened because one of the cyclists is a Social Distance Cycling Club Facebook group moderator and a Facebook friend. I can see that these sorts of connections have been happening all over the country. I experimented with meeting online friends in real life by traveling to cycling events where I knew online friends would be. This worked out really well when cycling RAGBRAI across Iowa. I also rode with friends in the slow roll social rides with 200 to 400 riders in Cleveland and Buffalo, which were great fun. And I've cycled a much smaller slow roll in Pittsburgh a few times this year too. When the big loop ride went away during the pandemic, I had time to work up a STEM and cycling curriculum for kids. There are 6 modules, and last summer and spring, I taught STEM and cycling to more than 100 kids in grades 3 through 8 in summer camps, through cycling clubs, and in special events. Service with good people. Bikes are a great way to learn physics, experimental design, and more. And bike safety and science can be taught simultaneously. It turns out kids love experiential science learning, unencumbered by a classroom, computer, or worksheets. I've freely shared copies of the lesson plans to more than 70 cyclists and educators across the country. I've seen the quiet confidence that can come with kids realizing they're good at science. I'm open to new ideas for using the curriculum if anyone has suggestions. Maybe a Montour Trail event? What's next? What's possible? In the past year, I've led 25 hikes or bike rides, most with geology themes, either through Pittsburgh nonprofit Venture Outdoors, with the Pennsylvania Master Naturalists, or with the Pittsburgh Major Taylor Cycling Club. The most recent excursions were bike rides to some of the best places to view Pittsburgh city lights along the north shore of the Allegheny River on nights of the full moon. There's not much geology to talk about at night there, so I include history of Pittsburgh bridges and key buildings, but I did manage to mention the geology of the subway route under the Allegheny, so I got a little geology in there. And we had some great evenings, including seeing an amazing shooting star with a feathery tail, unlike any shooting star I've ever seen, and the only shooting star I've seen in the city. That's the group in the large picture on the left. I think each of us will remember seeing that shooting star for the rest of our lives. I started sharing bike path geology lectures on YouTube. I've done this with slide sets I made for bike rides I led on segments of the Gap, Butler Freeport Trail, and the Allegheny River Trail. I think everyone has something to share, and many of the people on the Montour Trail Council have deep, unique knowledge of the Montour that could be shared this way and would be of interest to many people. Right now, I'm working on a slide set about the very neat geology of the Pine Creek Valley Trail and Pennsylvania's Grand Canyon. I'm thinking of continuing guiding groups in 2022, maybe including sometimes leading excursions through a commercial outfitter. I've been invited to help test and improve the new September 11 National Memorial Trail by cycling it with a group in June. And I definitely want to cycle Rybra again in July. It's exciting to think about the possibilities. I hope you can see how much I appreciate the work the Montour Trail Council has done, how I've been using what I've learned while pedaling 5 million rotations to try to find ways to serve others and be around good people, just as they do on the Montour Trail Council. Thank you.